they're saying the quiet part out loud. We don't have to wonder where they're going. They have laid it out for us. They have a very specific view of the way that society should look. And it is a view that is just extraordinarily damaging to the vast majority of Americans. It is a view of a society in which a very small number of people and a very white, very male universe of people get to control the decisions of everybody else and get to accrue all the benefit of that power and that wealth.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Every day, this country seems to inflict a fresh new injury on the rights and freedoms of American women. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the doors have been swung wide open for what Ms. Magazine calls a war on women, and I think that description is valid. Here's the thing. Every few pods, I want to make sure that we are highlighting the fighters, the people out here doing the work to oppose this administration, the organizers whose mission is to resist, to respond, to reimagine how things could be. I want you to know you're not alone, that we aren't just all out here drowning in the swamp of bad news and bad legislation, that there really are heroes we can join who are standing against the storm. Today, that group is Emily's List, the nation's largest resource for women in politics. With Republicans back in the White House, and I don't even want to call them MAGA Republicans anymore because there's no longer a distinction. All Republicans are MAGA now. Any traditional Republican or classic conservative would never have voted to approve Pete Hegseth to run the Department of Defense, or considered Tulsi Gabbard for intelligence, or put a 15-year heroin addict in charge of the country's health. Any real Republican would be outraged if some unelected foreign billionaire started hacking our nation's private information, or if the president castrated the power of Congress to rule by executive fiat. But those leaders are gone now. Now we have Donald Trump and his enablers. That is it. And while Elon is gutting the federal government, the people in charge of this administration's policy, namely the Heritage Foundation, who wrote and are having the president implement Project 2025 line by line, are gleefully turning back the clock on women's rights in order to force women back into the role of wife and mother and return us to the so-called ideal, natural family structure. So we're going to talk today about what's going on around the country with a focus on women, with the help of the president of Emily's List, Jessica Mackler. A veteran political strategist, Jessica started her career as an intern at Emily's List, then moved on to working on years of campaigns, but returned to the organization in 2021 after spending nearly a decade working in campaigns across the country. She served as the president of American Bridge 21st Century and ran the independent expenditure operations for the Democratic Governors Association and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Jessica was also the co-founder of one of the only women-run opposition research firms in the country and was a member of Politico's Women to Watch Power List. I invited her here today because I wanted her insight on what she and her organization are planning as women are increasingly losing their power across the country at the hands of the Republican Party. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, organizer, strategist, and president of Emily's List, Jessica Mackler. Welcome back, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for joining me. I mean, it's a pretty awful time to be an American if you care about human rights and the rule of law and a functioning government. But as I was saying in the introduction, I think women are particularly at risk right now. And, there's lots of people calling it a war on women. And I think as we watch Trump's executive orders and state and federal legislation that's being proposed and the sort of general sentiment towards women's rights in Project 2025, a war on women is a pretty valid way to describe it.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, and look, we saw this. They tried to deny it throughout the election cycle. They said this, Project 2025, what is that? But, they are implementing it page by page as we speak. And we see that. And that really did articulate. It is a war on women to take away our rights, to strip away our freedoms. And this has always been about control. And how do they get to a place where they have full control over our decisions, over our bodies, over our rights? That's where they're going.
Yeah. I mean, literally, if I think about the first Trump administration, they came in and they introduced this kind of wave of policies that restricted, reproductive rights and access to healthcare, both here in the US and worldwide. Then the Biden administration reversed all of those policies and helped repair the US's reputation as one of the largest funders of sexual and reproductive healthcare worldwide. And now Trump is back in reinstating all of his previous policies, but also going way further in, restricting women's reproductive and, quite frankly, human rights here and abroad. And if we think about Trump's first presidency, he appointed the 3 anti-abortion justices who joined the other conservative justices on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. And now we have 12 states with total abortion bans. 29 states have abortion bans based on gestational duration. 7 are at or before 18 weeks, and 4 states have abortion bans before 6 weeks, before many women even realize they're pregnant. And this is causing the U.S. mortality rate to just skyrocket, with a lot of these deaths being preventable. Women were just unable to access the necessary abortion care that they needed. And now we're in various serious talks with the new Trump administration about how to move forward with this national abortion ban, removing the rights of all women, no matter their state or the reason, to have access to safe abortion care, which would, as far as I'm concerned, not only be an open and hostile attack on women's rights, but an open and hostile attack on states' rights, which is what they said was the whole point in the first place.
Well, absolutely. And I'm glad that you kind of took a look at that history there through Trump's first administration, because it is really important to remember as we navigate this moment that we're in, that they laid the groundwork for this in his first administration. He's the architect of the crisis that we are in right now on reproductive freedom across the country. And to your point, they said, okay, we're going to leave this up to the states. That was a common refrain for Trump. That's where we want it. But we see in places like Missouri, where they are now Republicans in that state are working to override the will of the people when it comes to abortion rights. So this is not about leaving it to the states. This is not about, one action and done. This was always about a full ban on abortion. It was always about eroding these rights completely, and with devastating consequences. Women are dying. Women are dying in America today. More women are going to die in America over these next few years. And that is the consequence of this Trump administration.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is that people need to remember, we were told over and over again, this concept that we were just returning the rights to the states, right? But it was never about that. Dobbs didn't return the right to choose if you wanted an abortion to the states. It took the right to choose if you wanted an abortion from the citizens, right? We had the ability to choose, and they gave that ability for us to choose to the states. It wasn't that, it wasn't like the federal government had it and now the state government had it. We had it and now the state government had it, right? So Roe protected our rights, and Dobbs took those rights away. And now they want to take those rights away completely. And I also want to remind people that, women still don't have a constitutional protection of our rights. The Equal Rights Amendment, which should be the 28th Amendment, has yet to be made into law, which leaves women vulnerable to all types of abuse in this country. And it also makes all our hard-won legal rights that we have worked for decades and, for half a century easier to strip from us. And we're seeing that right now, this backsliding, which is a combination of these kind of more discriminatory laws being introduced, everything from, challenging no-fault divorce to getting rid of contraception, to this rise of covenant marriages or child marriages. And people need to know, these are all not just women's issues, these are human rights issues, but child marriage is legal in 37 states in America. There's over 300,000 minors, some as young as 10 years old, who are married in this country between 2010 and 2018. And girls were 86% of them being married off to old men, right? So this is stuff that we have to keep in mind, because I just listened to a high profile Christian pastor in a sermon say, you got to marry them young before they know any better. And I feel like this is the sentiment that is running the country right now. This is the world they want to put us back into, where we go back in the kitchen and we know our place, and they want to get us at 10 years old so that we don't know any better. And I think we need to be really clear that this is sort of the plan.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And it's really scary. It's really daunting, but being clear-eyed about where they're going is critical in this moment. And, we said this throughout, and I'll say it again. It's about control. It is not about any one specific issue. It is about how do you exercise control over women. And if you don't have the freedom to decide what happens to your body, then you really don't have freedom in this country. And that is something that we're seeing now play out right in front of us. And we have to be really aware of where they're going, right? Where are they aiming for is an important piece of this as we navigate how we fight back.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote this week online that I genuinely can't get over how much it feels like this country hates women. I mean, I thought I understood, right? Like, I watched two incredibly brilliant and accomplished women lose the presidency to Donald Trump, like the same man, right? But every day feels like a fresh new injury, like from what the administration is doing with their hiring, the people that are going to be running our biggest government agencies. These are like accused rapists, abusers, misogynists, to what they're saying about women, that we're these DEI hires, or our brains aren't big enough, or we shouldn't have certain jobs, or we shouldn't fight in the military. The Navy just paused all sexual assault prevention training. The National Science Foundation is having all their research combed for the word woman as a marker of potentially objectionable research. The new chair of the University of West Florida Board of Trustees, who DeSantis put in place, has said that no efforts should be made to recruit women into engineering or medical school or law school, right? There are 4 states that are already proposing capital crime legislation for women who get abortions. So that is the death penalty. And as somebody brilliantly pointed out online, nothing says pro-life more than punishing the rape victim more than you would ever have punished the rapist, right? So it just feels like a full-on attack.
It is a full-on attack. I mean, that is where they're going from. But we also know that the vast majority of Americans support abortion rights and they support reproductive freedom. And so really putting a spotlight on these attacks and being clear about what is happening, because they got into office by denying that this is what they were going to do, right? Again, they said, I don't know anything about a Project 2025. What are you talking about? And now they are here implementing it. And so we have to be continually putting this in front of Americans, because the vast majority of Americans, this is not what they want out of their government, but we have to make sure they see it, right? That it doesn't get swept under and fly under the radar, and they're not seeing what's actually happening.
Yeah. Okay. So that's exactly right. We need to make sure people are aware of what's happening. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, because everything I read, I'm like, oh my God, it's too much, right? So what are you guys doing? The powerful women at Emily's List. What are you planning to do at this moment of time? Because as far as I'm concerned, this clearly isn't business as usual. This isn't just about getting pro-choice Democratic women elected. This is about standing up for the women of the country.
Well, I think, we start here with the women that we have helped elect, and really watching the way in which they are leading. I think that is really critically important. And for people who are out there looking to say, okay, where can I find the leadership, the people who are standing up? You can look no further than the Democratic pro-choice women who've been elected at all levels of the ballot all over the country. To watch someone like Senator Alyssa Slotkin up on the dais of the committee hearing, questioning Pete Hegseth and really calling attention to what is going on in this country. You look at somebody like Congresswoman Kelly Morrison. She's the first pro-choice OBGYN to serve in Congress. And anytime the Republicans are out there with another one of these attacks, she's there on the floor of the House being really clear about what these attacks mean. And so step one is really centering them and the work that they're doing, the leadership they're having. I think it's really important that we uplift that, because as we said, Republicans are hoping that they can, this huge onslaught, this volume effect, the chaos will mean that they can get away with a lot of these things and people won't really understand what's happening. And so to me, it's these women who are putting a spotlight, and their voices in Congress or as governors are really important. And then governors in particular, they matter so much right now, right? I mean, the governors across the country who are taking action to protect their states, protect their communities. We have a great example just in the last few weeks where out of Louisiana, they are trying to prosecute a doctor in New York for prescribing abortion medication. And Governor Kathy Hochul took action to work immediately. So we're not on my watch. We're not going to have that happen. And so that's just one of the issues. Governors that are stockpiling mifepristone so that they have abortion medication in stock, no matter what happens in this administration. So that to me is piece one. And then, what I have really thought about a lot since the election is, kind of looking at 2024, what wins we did have. What does that mean in this moment when we're seeing this just onslaught of terrible. But when I look at what we've done over the course of this organization, over the course of the last election cycle, what I see is that women are out front and center in every fight that is in front of us, right? If you see a fight that's happening, a battle, an important place to be, the women are there and they are holding it up, and they're saying, this is what's going on. Pay attention. And they're in the center of these fights right now in Congress or across government, but they're also at the center of how we build back power. And so it's a both and, right? It's what are they doing now and where do we go to add more to their ranks and to secure power and put real checks on this administration.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And when you talk to your candidates and your supported representatives and the people that you want to put into the fight and your staff in your office, like what are you saying to them? Because it's got to be a little like they have to be looking around the same way I am, the same way my audience is, going like, it's so much. Well, how do you kind of keep that focus? And you say, this is the direction we're heading. Don't be distracted by what's happening over here. Here's what we're doing. Are you feeling buried under credit card bills, personal loans, or medical debt? Is your money working harder for your lender than it is for you? Well, it doesn't have to be that way. Not with PDS Debt. PDS Debt does more than just help you manage your debt. They help you take control of your debt. They go beyond the numbers so you can understand your unique financial situation, and then they craft a personalized plan designed just for you. PDS Debt understands that you don't need a cookie-cutter solution. You need a clear path to financial freedom and one that fits your lifestyle. And here's the best part. There's no minimum credit score required. So whether your credit is bad or fair, PDS Debt will help you save more and pay off your debt faster so you can start putting money back where it belongs, into your savings account. I know from personal experience that debt can be very overwhelming. It can make you feel as if you're drowning, which is why it's important that there are companies like PDS Debt, companies whose entire goal is to help get you out of the deep end. Getting started is easy. Go to pdsdebt.com/politicsgirl to complete your free debt assignment and see what options are available to you. Every day you wait is costing you money. So get started today with your free debt analysis in just 30 seconds at pdsdebt.com/politicsgirl. That's pdsdebt.com/politicsgirl. Take back control today by visiting pdsdebt.com/politicsgirl. So I still haven't fixed the blinds in my bedroom, but it's on my radar. As I said a couple of weeks ago, with all the ugly in the world, I've been spending my very limited downtime looking at bedrooms online to get inspiration for something pretty, and I'm starting with the windows. Which is why I'm happy to tell you about 3 Day Blinds, who are the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the US, who make upgrading your blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery easy breezy and painless. Not handy? No problem. Their team handles all the heavy lifting. Design, measurements, installation. You just sit back and get upgraded windows. You want help deciding what fits best in your home? Their professional design consultants, each with over 10 plus years of experience, will guide you to the perfect solution from the comfort of your own home. Plus, they'll give you a free, no obligation quote that same day. Right now, you can get a buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom window treatments. So whether you're looking for modern motorized blinds that sync with your smart home, or chic Roman shades that tie your room together, or just to upgrade to something a little better than you chose, like me 20 years ago, 3 Day Blinds have thousands of options for every style and budget. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your budget with 3 Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/politicsgirl for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/politicsgirl. One last time, that's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to the number 3, DAY, blinds.com/politicsgirl. Make your windows work for you. Maybe treat it like a little Valentine's Day gift to yourself. How do you kind of keep that focus and you say, this is the direction we're heading. Don't be distracted by what's happening over here. Here's what we're doing.
Well, I start with that piece about distraction, right?
Right.
That is the intention of the Trump administration and their allies, is to distract us, to overwhelm us, to scare us so much that we feel paralyzed and frozen, or that we're chasing a million different directions and we don't know where to go. And so we have to be keeping that front and center and acknowledging that, understanding it as their intention, to me is helpful to clarify where I need to be, that I can't let them get away with that. And then the other piece of it that I talk, especially with our staff and our team here, talk a lot about is that, you know, in a lot of ways we are lucky. And, you know, you can take a minute and go, lucky, what are you talking about? But the work that we do every day is a way to fight back against what is happening. And so if you take those feelings of overwhelm and frustration and sadness and fear, and you say, but every day I get to show up and do the work here, this is how we fight back. It helps to feel like you have something productive to do in these moments. And then the third thing I would say, and this is something I say to myself all the time as a own personal mantras in these moments, is that this is the assignment. This is what is being asked of us as a moment in history, because this is the fight of our generation. I think, for a lot of us, when Trump came into office the first time, you see the shock of all of that. And you think, okay, well, if we just win in 2018, or if we just win in 2020, then we can say, okay, we did it. We overcame this threat. And what we know now is that this is the threat that we are going to be fighting against for the foreseeable future. But there is no other choice. We have to do this work because that the whole fabric of society depends on it. And so I feel that very deeply, that this is something that I don't have the right to walk away from, that I am, lucky to get to be in this fight as hard as it is. And that is something that I share with our community and with our staff. And I will say, when I hear from them and when I talk to them, you mentioned our candidates and our leaders, I often say, I start with, you're really in the belly of the beast. And they're like, yeah, I really am. But they echo that same thing, that they know that it's more important than ever that they're there. And that feeling that, how lucky are we that we get to do a thing that will help get us out of this mess?
I think a lot of people could appreciate that, because I think a lot of people who aren't working for an organization right now, they feel like, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to help. And I think one of the things we talk about on this show is pick, 2 or 3 things that you really care passionately about, whether that's women's rights or environmental rights or healthcare or LGBTQ plus rights, and focus on that, because focused attention on the thing that really matters to you, everyone can take their focused attention, and a lot of focused attention on all the different issues will actually make change, as opposed to feeling like, I can't help with anything. And like, what am I supposed to do? At Emily's List, you guys know what you're there for. You're there to, move this forward and to move pro-choice women forward. And that is a very focused way to look at things, and it's helpful. So it seems like us out here in the real world can feel quite discouraged. The more appropriate emotion for Emily's List, based on your literature and our conversation right now, is you guys are feeling kind of determined. You see that this is your job right now, that this is the assignment, this is where you're supposed to be. But it seems like you also still believe that we can restore our rights and freedoms. You haven't given up. You just know that to do that, we have to retain and regain power, right? So in this political climate, how do you see us regaining power,
Yeah. And that word determined is one that I come back to again and again. And also, people say, well, how are you feeling? Is there a way? How do you find optimism? How do you find hope? And to me, I choose optimism, and I'm choosing hope because that is the only option in front of me. And I do believe that if we do this work, we will win and we will secure that power because we have done it before. So even in 2024, and it doesn't change, of course, the things that this Trump administration is going to be able to do in terms of the power that they have. But even in 2024, what I saw is that we had women candidates across this country who won in the most difficult of circumstances. We won 3 Senate races in states that Trump carried. We won House races. We flipped House races and held House seats in parts of the country that Trump carried by significant margins. I mean, look at a woman like Kirsten McDonald-Rivet, who won in Michigan, outperformed the top of the ticket by 9 points. I mean, that's incredible. And so what I see is that, supporting women, it is important for representation. We talked about their voices in this moment. It is also a strong electoral strategy. And so at Emily's List, we're here to get the win. My job is to win as many races as possible and to do it with women. And I see that when we do this work, we can win, even when it's extraordinarily hard. And so that's the work that's in front of us. And the truth is, we have that happening right now. There is a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin that is going to decide the makeup of that court again. And we know that the rights and freedoms of people in Wisconsin are going to be determined by what happens in this Supreme Court race. And that's happening right now. We have 2 governor's races in 2025 with incredible Democratic pro-choice women, Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. These are 2 women who came into power in the first Trump administration, really fueled by the first Trump election. And so they honed their leadership in a Trump administration. There is no one who is more ready to lead than two women who came out of national security and intelligence community and now are running for governor, one of the most important positions that we have in this country, and that really came up through and developed their leadership through that Trump administration. And so, like you said, it is about being really focused on what are those opportunities, what is my job and this team's job, my community's job at Emily's List, and how do we get those wins? Because those wins are going to matter.
Yeah, I think the key word here is win, right? Because I think that often Democrats talk about in nuance, we talk about our ideas, we talk about policy, and I think we really do need to bring it down and boil it down to wins. How do we get the wins? We shouldn't be matching people on single individual markers and do they meet this purity test and are they perfect? I think at this point, Democrats have to be like, okay, I'm done losing and I'm not losing to these jackasses. So what are we doing about it? Like I'm looking at Mikey and Cheryl. It's Cheryl, Mikey Cheryl?
Mikey Cheryl. Yeah.
Mikey Cheryl. So I'm looking at Mikey Cheryl in New Jersey and I'm like, here's the thing. I love Abigail Spanberger and she better win. She's so spectacular. She's a real superstar and she has been from the beginning. But I was just looking into Mikey and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman is incredible. She's a mother of 4. She's given a lifetime of public service, but she was also a helicopter pilot in the US Navy for 10 years, right when we have this time where we're like, get women out of combat, and she's like, she's done it, right? She's an assistant U.S. attorney. She was a member of Congress. She flipped a Republican stronghold for her place in the House, outperforming nearly every Democrat in her state. And we know how essential these blue state governors are right now for holding the line. And I feel like people like Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Cheryl are in the best position to bring together this broad coalition of people that aren't necessarily just like, blue dog Democrats to really bring these wins that we need.
Absolutely. I mean, you have two women who are experts in national security.
I mean, unbelievable.
Lived and really, like I said, developed their leadership through that first Trump administration. So they understand who we are up against. They understand the threat that is in front of us and are extraordinarily battle tested. When Mikey Cheryl flipped that House seat back in 2018, and Emily's List was proud to stand with her at that time, it is the first time that a Democrat held that seat in 30 years. So who better to win in this moment than somebody who understands what it takes to win when it's extraordinarily hard? And so when I look at those women who really, came up through 2016, 2018, and now are stepping up in these bigger ways, that is really where I point to and say, we can win and we can do big things. And that is our path out of this. We just have to do the work to support them. And like you said, when we do that, it kind of gives us this focus that helps really alleviate some of that feeling of frustration and, the permanent Sunday scaries that we have in effect as we're living through this administration.
Yeah. And I think the concept of stepping up is really where we're at here, right? This idea that, you might feel helpless, you might feel hopeless, but action is really the antidote to apathy, right? Like stepping up is a really big step because I want to be clear with people, like, what we're talking about right now, it's not just about abortion rights that are under attack. I mean, this whole removing of DEI protections is just a giant blow to women in general because it makes it harder for women to have equal access to higher education, equal access to the workforce. And these decisions are making it so it's so much easier to fire women, minorities, any of these people for any reason. Like if you're a woman, you can be fired again for being pregnant, for having children, for having a shrill voice. I mean, I think women are going to be thrown out because they just don't like them that much, right? It's clearly all part of this Christian nationalist plan, this Project 2025 that you have so clearly said, they were like, we don't know anything about it. And now they're doing a check mark of it, right? Of getting women out of the workforce, right? Getting women out of higher education and putting them back into the home. This is really a long-term plan for this entire group of people. When I say long-term, I'm talking like 40, 50 years, because the best way to keep women in poverty or dependent is by not allowing them to dictate the timing and size of their families, right? So by removing choice, women are way more likely to get trapped in situations they can't get out of. And then there's all these other elements that this same group is doing that seems like, oh, this has nothing to do with reproductive care. And yet it has the same goal of putting women back in their place. And I think of things like school vouchers, right? School vouchers, you're like, okay, well, that has nothing to do with reproductive rights, but it does. does, right? They sell school vouchers as parents' choice. But what vouchers really do is defund public education, which leaves parents with either a religious school to go to, a private school to go to, or a charter school to go to, which is either inaccessible to the poor and middle class, or they become like an indoctrination camp for the patriotic teachings or the religious teachings that this group that is in charge right now would like to force on our children to then breed them to be baby makers back in, when they're a little bit older or getting married at 10. It's because we're stopping them from going to regular public schools. The Department of Education under Donald Trump right now, which they are talking about defunding, of course, is even promoting homeschooling, right? And their line is homeschooling is the lifeline we didn't know we needed, but if your public school is defunded, of course, you might have to homeschool because you have nowhere to send your kids during the day. But who is doing the homeschooling, right? Which parent is quitting their job to teach the kids, right? So it is sold as school choice. It is sold as parents' choice. But the result really ends up stripping women of their choices. And that's what we're living with right now. Are you frustrated with your current skincare routine and tired that you rarely see lasting results? That's where today's sponsor, OneSkin, comes in. In honor of National Women's Investors Month, I'm highlighting OneSkin's founding team of female scientists who have developed a whole new approach to skincare, starting at the cellular level. Their proprietary OS1 peptide is the first peptide scientifically proven to reverse skin aging by switching off the dysfunctional sentient cells that cause lines, wrinkles, and crepey skin. OS1 is in all of OneSkin's topical supplements, from their flagship facial moisturizer and award-winning eye cream to their sunscreens that protect the skin from UV damage and cellular aging. The sunscreen is actually the product I use the most. At the end of the day, your skin is your body's largest organ and the most linked to visible signs of aging. I have taken to carrying OneSkin in my purse so I can put it on my hands when I'm in the car. Our hands have a way of really aging us that I try to make sure every time I'm driving, I put sunscreen on my hands and on my arms. OneSkin was founded in 2016 by an all-woman team of scientists with PhDs in skin cell regeneration, stem cell biology, immunology, and bioinformatics. They run their R&D process completely in-house, adhering to the scientific process from start to finish. Every claim they make is based on lab and clinical studies that show the OS1 peptide works at the cellular level to improve key aging biomarkers while reducing the visible signs of aging. OneSkin believes the purpose of skincare is not just to improve how you look, but to optimize your skin's biology at the cellular level, so your skin is more resilient to the aging process in general. Founded and led by an all-woman team of skin longevity scientists, OneSkin is redefining the aging process with their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient proven to help skin look, feel, and behave like its younger self. Get 15% off with the code PoliticsGirl at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code PoliticsGirl. And after you purchase, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please support the show and tell them that we sent you. Invest in the health and longevity of your skin with OneSkin. Your future self will thank you. I'll be honest, the more we move into this administration, the more afraid I am of being harassed or stalked or doxxed. The world is just becoming so harsh, and I put myself out there all the time. But what I don't deliberately put out there is all of my personal information. Have you ever wondered how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for everyone to see? Well, it's more than you think. It's not just your name and your contact info. It can be your social security number, your home address, even information of your family members. And those things are constantly being compiled by data brokers and then sold online. Data brokers make profit off our data because our data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy our private details, which leads to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, and unwanted spam calls. Which is why we want to do everything we can to protect your privacy with a service like Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes your personal information from hundreds of data brokers. When you sign up, you provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular, personalized privacy reports showing what information they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. They're always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Today you get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting PoliticsGirl to 64,000. Text PoliticsGirl to 64,000. That's PoliticsGirl, all one word, to 64000. But the result really ends up stripping women of their choices. And that's what we're living with right now.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to think about, we talk a lot about all of these ways. And I think it's so important that you're putting this in front of people so they understand all of the ways that they are looking to pull power away from you, because that's what this is really about. It's about power. The other side of that is the why. Why are they pulling power away from women? Why are they pulling power away from people all over this country who, are in a position to be marginalized, to suffer economic consequences of that? The why is because they are trying to accrue that power for themselves, whether that is, billionaire funders and allies, whether that is corporations, whether that is the politicians themselves. This is about taking power away from you and accruing it for themselves so they can do whatever they want to do. And I think it's really important that we name that, because the reason that they are doing this is not because they believe that, that they have some broader moral argument on this. It is that they want all the power. They want all the control. And then you think of all of the things that a person can do when they have all of the control. And so that's where they are aiming for. And I think it's important we name both sides. Like, this is what it will cost you, and this is what they will get when they take these actions, because that's what they're in search of. They are in search of control and power.
Yeah, control and power. And it's not just taking it from us, it's giving it to them. I think that's a good way to put it. Because, this also has to do with the stuff that they're doing with, scrubbing these websites, right? You're scrubbing websites of information. It sounds like, okay, why would you do that? But it's about rising levels of ignorance, right? It's like if you scrub the NIH site of women's medical research, if you scrub the CDC website of reproductive healthcare research, if you scrub these sites of information where you find help for domestic abuse or sexual assault, or reproductivehealthcare.gov is gone, right? If you don't teach sexual education in high school, and you can't get information on how to manage your reproductive care or the size of your family online, if you make abortion illegal and you limit access to birth control, what are you really doing, right? You're taking the power away from the citizens and you are leaving them open to attack. You are leaving them open to very few choices in their own society. And we're not just doing that. America's not just doing that to Americans. We're doing it to women around the world, right? Because we were protecting a lot of women around the world, and we're pulling our funding from that too. And I think we have to remember that it's just like, they don't see us as equal. They see us as subordinate. They want to put us back in our place because they believe that women leaving the home is what destroyed our society, and returning to some sort of father knows best world is going to fix it all, which we know is not the case.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That is where they are going. But here's the thing. Like I said, when you think about it on the front of reproductive freedom, but it's true on so many of these fronts, we know that people are with us. And so that's why this is so important, because it's putting in front of people what is happening and then really giving them a clear choice, right? Yeah. And so being able to say, here is an alternative, and how do we channel people into something they can do about it so that they don't feel like, okay, all is lost. I'm just going to, duck and cover. There is an alternative here, and we can still do the work to restore our rights, to restore our freedoms, to stand up to this. A bully is looking for somebody who is going to cower in the corner because they're so afraid of being hit. And we all have to link arms and stand together and say, I'm not afraid, and I'm going to stand up, because I know that when the American people understand what's happening and have a choice that's put in front of them that's clear, they're with us.
Yeah. Team Trump keeps going on about how they won a mandate, but what they really won was a narrow political victory based on lies, right? They won based on saying all the things that they wouldn't be doing. That doesn't change the threat that this administration poses to so many people, to women and girls. But it does mean, as you're saying, that we have to keep reminding ourselves that the majority of the country doesn't want this, right? Like
Right.
Project 2025 calls for the end of abortion, limiting contraception, cutting programs that support mothers and children, eliminating the Head Start childcare that allows women to go back to work, rolling back women's workplace rights, rolling back equal pay measures, undermining LGBTQ plus rights, gutting Title IX protections against sexual assault and harassment, investigating and prosecuting universities and entities that use any form of DEI. And you're like, no, bro, like that isn't what the majority of us want. And it's not
Right.
even what you ran on. So we need to keep reminding people because the majority is still with us.
And the pieces that they said that they were running on, the other lies that they told was that they were going to make life better for people in this country. And we know that that is not what was you just outlined in terms of what is ahead of us in Project 2025. And it's not what we're seeing in these first weeks of the Trump administration. And so being really clear with people that, you know, they told you that they were here to make your lives better. And that is not what is happening. In fact, they are here and they're going to make your lives worse. And again, but here's a path out, right? And we have to give people that path out. We have to show them that there is another way. And that's a really important piece of this.
Yeah, here's the path out. That's a really important because that brings us back to what you do. You know, it brings us back to what Emily's List is doing, is giving us representatives and supporting representatives who are offering that path out. Like look at blue states right now that are pushing back, who are fighting to pass legislation for things like paid parental leave and public funding for childcare and elder care and accessible and affordable abortion and contraception and pay equity and new protections for men's violence against women. There are blue states right now doing that, making that work. Like you're talking about Kathy Hochul fighting back for the New York doctor that sent abortion pills through the mail to a teenager in another state. And she's like, no, not on my watch. We're not doing that. We need those leaders and we need to support those leaders because the Trump administration is just going to attack and attack and attack decades of hard fought wins for women's rights. So we need to know that there's still people out here fighting back. And we need to know that there's people like you that are out here not only fighting back with the people you already have in power, but you are actively recruiting new people that also want to do that work because clearly we have to be relentless in this fight.
Relentless is the right word. And we have been talking a lot at the beginning of this year about what we are referring to as critical state centers of power, right? So governors, attorneys general, secretaries of state. We saw attorneys general leap into action around the OMB funding freeze when that first came out. And they have been a constant source of leadership through that first Trump administration and in this administration as well. So those critical state centers of power, state legislatures, and it's true for blue states, but we've also secured power in swing states as well where it really matters. You look at a state like Michigan, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer, both through that first Trump administration and now in this current Trump administration, just plays such an important role for the state of Michigan. That is going to matter a lot. And we've already endorsed a woman, Jocelyn Benson, who is running for governor in Michigan to continue that legacy. So, and that work, I mean, more importantly, that work. So to me, those critical state centers of power, whether that is state legislative majorities that can block efforts of Republicans. In the last election cycle, we broke the Republican supermajority in North Carolina. That matters. That means that Republicans cannot override the veto of the Democratic governor in North Carolina. So when we look at the work that is being done, we can see that there are people that are standing up and fighting back and blunting the attacks that are coming and figuring out ways, very creative ways, to protect their population. And then, like you said, it's about how do we add to their ranks? How do we expand that? And how do we use what is happening in this administration that we know, if people understand it, is very deeply unpopular, to fuel that effort to add to their ranks?
Right. Yeah. I mean, clearly women need leaders willing to stand up for us. They need leaders willing to stand up for our rights, because this isn't just about Project 2025 and their plan for women or abortion or contraception, which is now on the chopping block, just so people know. It's going to the Supreme Court. There's going to be a case heard this year about our access to contraception. but it's about these same people's plans to kind of completely remake our society. I mean, Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, put a target on the legal right of contraception when he said he believed the precedent in the Griswold v. Connecticut decision was as wrong as Roe, is what he said, and it should be overturned. But he also said that we should be overturning the constitutional right to same-sex intimacy and same-sex marriage. So even if you're not a woman, okay, getting pro-choice women elected to save our rights is a way to protect other rights in this country as well, because you don't just stop at stripping one group of Americans of their rights, right? Like you set it up and then you've opened the door to strip a lot of people of their rights, right? This is a far-right, nationalistic, religious view that will only end up hurting everyone because that's just how it works. You don't stop at just stripping one group. You say, here is the group we're going to protect and everyone else is in trouble. And so I think we have to make sure that when we are electing pro-choice Democratic women or women, people that will fight for women's rights, whether they are male or female, we're actually helping everyone else's rights as well to be protected.
We are. And as you said, in referencing Clarence Thomas's words there, they're saying the quiet part out loud. We don't have to wonder where they're going. They have laid it out for us. And they will take it even further. We know that, but they've been pretty clear about where they're going. They have a very specific view of the way that society should look. And it is a view that is just extraordinarily damaging to the vast majority of Americans. It is a view of a society in which a very small number of people and a very white, very male universe of people get to control the decisions of everybody else and get to accrue all the benefit of that power and that wealth. And that is not a society, as we said, that most Americans want to live in. And so this is the way, electing these women and electing leaders who are going to fight for these rights. That is how we push back against what they are after here. The fire is on right now, right? Like this is the moment. This is emergency situation. And so we really all have to lean in and do everything we can because they are doing this in full force right as we speak.
Absolutely in full force as we speak. And I want people to understand, like, these are the same people out here talking about repealing the 19th Amendment, right? And they might not even have to do that because what's happening in Congress right now, and I want people to keep an eye on it, and this is why we need to support our, Democratic leadership right now, is they have something on the table called the SAFE Act. And the SAFE Act is supposed to be about safe access to the ballot and making sure people who vote are American citizens. And you think, okay, well, that sounds pretty reasonable, right? But that means you have to have either a passport to vote, which most people in this country do not actually have, or you have to have two forms of ID that match, one of them being your birth certificate to prove you were born in America. But if you think about what most women in America have, my birth certificate does not match my driver's license because I got married and I have a different last name. So this SAFE Act is actually a backdoor to voter suppression for women. And people don't understand that. They think, oh, well, we're just going to vote to make sure you're an American citizen to vote. You're like, no, read the bill. Support the representatives that have read the bill, because this is actually a way to stop the people they don't want from voting to vote. This is the kind of steps these people are taking. And I want to be very sure that people understand this isn't just about reproductive care. This isn't just about contraception. This isn't just about women's rights. This is about who gets to matter in America. And as you said earlier, if we're taking rights from someone, who are we giving them to? Because that's really the bottom line. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica. We are so desperately in need of people like you who really are in this fight together. So please tell us what you need. What can we do to help Emily's List defeat this sort of growing anti-woman movement in America?
Well, thank you so much for having me again. It is always great to be here. I think there's a few things, and again, it's always helpful for me, at least I find, and I think for your listeners as well, to have a few tight things to focus on that you can say, okay, here's some things I can do. So one is look for those moments on whatever issue it is that is speaking to you, where you see these leaders standing up and elevate them. It's easy to feel like nothing is happening, but there is a lot that is going in to fighting back. Find a candidate or an elected or two that you really think is leading on an issue you care about and lift them up. Share on your social media, support them financially if you can, share it with your personal network, whatever that looks like. I think to me, that is the thing that is most important. And then, as I probably said the last time I was here, Emily's List is based on the concept of community. The idea that we're going to bring together a group of people and do something together that we could never do alone. And for us, that means winning. And so I just encourage people also to visit our website, visit us on social channels at Emily's List or myself at Jessica Mackler, and just join our community and be a part of this movement. And it'll not only help us, but I think it also will help people feel like they are doing something instead of being overwhelmed by the moment.
Yeah, doing something instead of having to feel something. You know, it's a totally different feeling. Yeah, no, well, listen, Emily's List was founded by a bunch of pissed off women almost 40 years ago. And I hope that generations of pissed off citizens will help you fight back now. So God knows we need to be doing something. And I'm so glad you're out here doing it.
I feel lucky to get to do it, even when it's hard.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you. Always so good to be here.
So that was Jessica Mackler, reminding us that we are so much more powerful in community, that we can do things together that we could never do alone, that fighting back is actually a gift because it makes us feel less hopeless, and optimism and hope are a choice. Watch the way people are leading in this country. Look for the moments where our leaders stand up and do the right thing and elevate them. What this administration is doing isn't about any one specific issue, it's about control. And it's not just about who they're taking rights from, it's about who they're giving those rights to. Highlight those attacks on our rights. Draw attention to them. These people ran on giving us all the things, and what they're doing is taking all the things. You make sure people know that. I want to thank Jessica for joining us today, and you for caring enough about this country to be here. Now go out and check out Emily's List and support them if you can. They are really out here doing the work that needs to be done. Action is always better than apathy. Until next week, PG out. Before you go, I just want to say if you're a premium member of this podcast, then thank you. And if you're not a member, then please consider supporting my work. We are almost completely overwhelmed by state-supporting legacy media and propaganda at this point. So it's essential that those of us out here still bringing you the facts are supported. So if you aren't a member of PoliticsGirl Premium, please consider going to PoliticsGirl.com and signing up. You will get this podcast ad-free, along with my rants and bonus content sent directly to your inbox. So even if my work is silenced on social media, you will still get access to the truth. There is a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also on PoliticsGirl.com. And as always, please like and share these podcasts so we can grow our audience, because the more people who have access to this kind of information, the better. Thank you always for your time and support. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, in partnership with the Midas Media Network, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.